In this video, we will be tasting and talking about batch 114 of the Eco Cha Tea Club, a light roast Shan Lin Oolong tea from Taiwan. Batch 114 of the Eco Cha Tea Club is a light roast Shan Lin Oolong tea from Taiwan. This is a fall 2024 harvest, and our tea mentor Lisa Lin procured it from a mutual friend, actually, who was also a co-worker of Lisa's husband Tony at the Lugu Farmers Association for decades. Tony has since retired. His co-worker has mostly passed on his tea making profession to his two sons, although he is in the factory most of the time to supervise, as was the last time they harvested, actually, when we showed up in the factory as well. I think I've known Mr. Zhang for 30 years. Lisa has begun to work with him in recent years more consistently. Basically, she's just creating a demand for a more significantly oxidized leaf material, because otherwise he would say that nobody wants to buy that type of tea and would make it a lighter oxidation, closer to well, actually something along the lines of what's used for the Lugu Farmers Association Dongding Oolong tea competition, which a lot of us say isn't oxidized enough, especially for the roast level that they put their quality standard as. That's a different story. So Lisa has been encouraging him to make more oxidized oolong tea, a more heavily oxidized oolong tea, still like slightly lower than medium, I would say. Something that she has versatility to work with in her roasting. Lisa, that's where she has excelled in the last 20 years. She did, the first time I met Tony and Lisa, they were making tea in their home factory. And Lisa was looking like more of a technician than Tony. Tony has had a career, etc. So yeah, Lisa knows how to make tea, but she has been focusing on roasting for 20 years now. So, and what she has come to like to make the most is a very light roast or a light to medium roast. This batch of tea was roasted 3 times. She started out somewhere between 80 and 90 degrees Celsius and brought it up just over 110 degrees Celsius. So that's like not much higher than boiling temperature water, right? I think it's 230 degrees Fahrenheit is 110 Celsius. So to call it roast is almost a misnomer. It's low temperature baking for long periods of time, like 6, 7, 8 hour sessions. And it transforms the compounds in the leaf from a fresh green, more bitter astringent quality in the brewed tea to a sweeter, thicker, more full-bodied quality. And yeah, we just want to encourage Lisa in her love of making tea like this by offering it to the tea club, but also to represent this sort of section of the very wide spectrum of oolong teas in general, but even the wide spectrum of roast level. So yeah, 3 times over probably a few weeks, and just gradually bringing on a different flavor profile. I feel like this tea has maintained a level of freshness. It just has brought out a lot more sweetness and kind of substantial flavors rather than fresh, high aromatic notes. It's more like a lightly baked, maybe a pastry or bread or something like that. Getting thirsty. Let's have a sip. Yeah, every time it's just like she hit the mark in terms of a balance of freshness and sweetness in my perception. So this teapot is 200 milliliters. I put 13.5 grams of dried tea leaves in. That's roughly 1:15 ratio. Because it is a roasted tea that, you know, it's still not highly roasted. The leaves are still quite supple. We'll get into that in a minute. So I started the brewing. I first filled the teapot, put the leaves in the teapot, filled it with water, and immediately poured it out just to bring the teapot up to temperature and not to have the teapot absorbing, decreasing the temperature quickly because it was cold. So heat up the teapot, moisten the leaves slightly. First brew, 1 minute, 10 seconds. And then I brought it down to 50 seconds on the second brew, back up to 1 minute on the third brew, 1 minute 10 on the fourth brew, 1 minute 20 seconds on the fifth brew, and then I think it was 150. Anyway, 10 to 20 second increases with each successive brew. Those are all, I diligently repeat this in each of our tastings to give our Tea Club members the basic idea of the flow from in a Gong Fu brewing session. When we're brewing socially or more casually, we don't use a clock or a watch. You know, you can just kind of judge it like, okay, I'm going to let it sit a little bit longer in the pot the first time, and then I'm going to bring it down the second time because the leaves are fully moistened, rehydrated, and hot, so they don't need to do that first initial steeping for a longer time. 1 to 15 ratio, starting a little bit over 1 minute, going down below 1 minute, and then gradually increasing brewing time with each successive brew. Honestly, I haven't tasted parsnips in 20 years probably. They don't exist here in Taiwan. I think about them fairly often because I love them. Roast parsnips and roasted vegetables, you know, in an oven, a tray of roasted vegetables is, I think, one of the best things ever. But so it reminds me of roasted parsnips. It has this sort of savory, warming spice quality to it, sweetness. But then there is this fresh, some sort of root vegetable or savory, deep savory, dark green kind of flavor that's combined with a toasted grains, nutty, sweet, mostly sweet and savory spice, but more like a warming spice. I chose mace. It's not quite as strong as nutmeg, something that within that category between cinnamon and nutmeg, but neither, you know. So we wanted to represent this style of tea, a light roast oolong. This is a high mountain oolong tea. By default, it was grown at about 1,200 meters, I believe. And fall crop, if you're going to oxidize more, summer and fall crops are more conducive. Well, they like to keep the spring either for a straight up high mountain tea, a minimally oxidized tea, and have that fresh spring quality. Or it's also the composition of the leaves when you oxidize them are probably ideal for competition grade tea. So the leaves grow faster, it's warmer, they have different constituents, different chemical compounds in them, and the finished product is more desirable if they are oxidized more significantly. So this was probably picked in early September. And yeah, Mr. Zhang, his family, they have like 5 or 6 brothers and cousins. They're all top-notch tea makers. They've won awards for over 30 years. So he knows what he's doing. And now that Lisa is saying, I'll buy a whole day's harvest, or I'll buy, you know, a significant amount of tea off you if you make it to my liking, he's showing up for that. And we're really excited about that. We tasted this same batch of tea when Lisa roasted it only once, and that was really interesting. It wasn't quite enough of a roast factor, I feel, to represent a light roast tea, but it was still very fresh, just barely kind of turning toward that sweeter base and more substantial body. Yeah, just bringing it kind of a couple notches down from slightly more oxidized high mountain tea. We went with 3 roastings because she wasn't bringing the temperature up very high. There's no sense of like charredness at all. And let's quickly look at the leaves before we continue to drink all the tea. The brewed leaves are green, you know, and the stems are still very supple. This is an example. So it only has one sad looking leaf on there. It did have a few more. That happens with especially with the compression process when they're rolling the leaves. After the leaves have been fixed, the next day they roll them, and now they use a compacting machine where the leaves get separated from the stems a little more than they used to. So there's a lot of leaf and then stem. But my point was, this indicates a summer or fall growth. The leaves are very thin, the stems are very thin. They remain supple, which allows the moisture to be depleted from them more easily. And they grow longer because it's at the height of their vegetation phase in their annual cycle. And the leaves were allowed to grow to pretty much full maturity. And you can really, this is definitely, I would say close to medium oxidation, at least on the scale that is being used in recent years. You can see the slight browning all the way through the leaf, not just on the edges, compared to a minimally oxidized tea. So this mature leaf material, well oxidized, more traditionally made, more oxidation equals more traditional in a fundamental kind of way. And then tea wasn't, Dongding Oolong tea, as it is called in recent decades, the Lugu, the township that is the home of Dongding, 50 years ago, before the Lugu Farmers Association developed a competition and eventually a quality standard for that, the local tea artisans, the tea producers, didn't roast their teas. The tea merchants who bought their tea would roast some of it, especially if they had leftover tea from the previous year. They would roast it and have two versions, the new fresh batch and last year's batch that is now roasted. That's how it slowly evolved over decades. But when the leaves are allowed to mature almost fully and still be picked when they're still growing. So basically, when tea leaves grow on grow a new branch, basically, the leaves are kind of like this, with the stem in the middle. They're in a V shape. And then when they reach the fully mature, when they're not going to really grow much more, they're just going to get thicker and more fibrous, they open to a flat leaf. So ideally the leaves are picked before they open completely, but they're already matured fully. So it's a very short window, like within 3 days they can be, for high mountain tea anyway, they don't want to leave it on the plant for more than a day or two after it is opened, and ideally before it opens fully. So, but when they open and continue to bake, they're still kind of growing. They're still like only 2 months old, the new growth on the tree. That is more, it's more appropriate to make a more significantly oxidized tea from larger leaf material that's still supple. So my basic point after all that explanation is that traditionally made oolong tea in the Lugu tradition anyway comes out better when you have a fully grown leaf stock to work with. Okay, let's see what we got for taste here. I'm going to go back to the first. Root vegetables is what I taste. When the leaves were wafting and I'm getting the aroma from the teapot and sometimes off the pitcher. If you empty the pitcher, it definitely gives you an aromatic profile. I often think, I grew up in New York State, so New England style weather, temperate climate. When fall comes and the leaves are turning brown and falling off the trees, that's a very specific scent in the air. And this reminded me of that repeatedly, along with that roasted parsnips aromatic quality as well, or roasted winter vegetables, you could say. Straight up, the thing I appreciate most about this tea is the fresh hit that you get, along with the sweet base that comes from the roasting. Okay, I think we're hitting peak around the fourth brew, actually, in terms of substance and mouthfeel. The first brew, even though I let it sit for 1 minute 10, it was still kind of on the lighter side, which is nice because you get more of the high notes or aromatic profiles. The second brew is similar, with a little more sweetness to it. I'm almost done with the third one here. And then with the third and fourth, the body of the tea is really just totally coming through, and it's a nice mouthfeel. More of that warming spice kind of quality combined with the fresh qualities that are still there. I kind of grew up in my tea life in Lugu, so something deep happens when I drink this type of tea. It's my favorite, I'll say it. Why? I guess if I were to give a reason why I like this tea the most, it's because it has this spectrum of a flavor and aromatic profile that other teas just don't have. A heavily roasted tea is a heavy roast tea, and a high mountain tea is a high mountain tea. This is going somewhere in between and getting the best of both worlds and making something different from either of those sides of the spectrum. One, two, three, four, five, 6 brews in, still fine. Barely noticeable in terms of the flavor is almost the same for me. Yeah, really subtle differences through each brew, especially like 4, 5, 6 seem like almost identical to me. So you're going to get at least 6 brews. I think I could have kept going for 8 brews, and that's another aspect of traditionally made tea. It has something to offer that didn't exist before it wasn't processed a little more, and with finesse, of course. Okay, so there we have it. Fall 2024 harvest of Shan Lin High Mountain Tea, oxidized more so that it could be roasted to light to medium. This could be roasted more and do fine. Procured by our tea mentor, Lisa Lin, who we continue to learn from after 30 years of showing up in their home and listening and asking questions. Let's have a sip of the combo. A little more dense than all of the individual brews. It's more substantial, but it doesn't have as much complexity as I got from each brew. I didn't look at the dried leaves yet. Everything looks fairly uniform size-wise. If the leaves are oxidized more uniformly, dried uniformly, and then they'll be able to be roasted uniformly as well, producing what we consider a fairly ideal batch of tea. Shan Lin, what are we calling this? Light roast Shan Lin Oolong tea from Lugu, Taiwan. Thanks for being with us. I'm going to keep drinking.